Welcome to the Geek podcast, where time flows like a river and history repeats. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
Today we're talking about, well said, by the way, repeat gaming, because we realized we haven't really ever talked about like games that we've beaten and then gone back and beaten again. And I thought it would be kind of an interesting thing for you and I to start talking about, so we're talking about it off air. And I'm honestly surprised that our lists are so short. Like, I'm surprised and I'm not surprised at the same time.
Yeah, because when I thought about this, I'm like, oh yeah, I've played that one time. Nope, never went back to that. I think about it all the time. It's like I want to replay games, but I tend not to for a number of reasons. So it really does surprise me that yours is way shorter than I expected too.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of games where like I've beaten them once, because I tend to, if I like a game, I end up beating it, right? Like I either sample it and I do like half an hour, maybe an hour of play, and that's it ever. Or if I dig in, I'll get to the point where like, oh yeah, I'm going to beat this game. So I beat more games than you, but I have a lot of games, as I was thinking through this list, right? I have a lot of games where I realized that I've gone back and I started a second playthrough and I never finished the second playthrough. And I think that's true across just like a ton of my library, which like I want to go back. I want to spend more time with it, but there's always something new or there's something more pressing or like, oh yeah, I've already experienced this before after I dig into it. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of had this experience. I don't know if I actually need it again fully.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I am. Like I remember like earlier this year, like I'll start like retro games specifically, like stuff from my childhood, and it's a replay, but it's in such, I don't even say long distance chunks, but they're just so spread out over time. It's like I'll get 3 hours into this RPG and then I'll go play something else and I'll come back and reinstall it and move another 6 hours into it, where over like 5 years I end up beating the game, but it's not in one long playthrough. Like I've done that with Xenogears and things like that over time, where I'm consistently working through it, but not in any kind of normal playthrough time frame.
Yeah, and so maybe we should dive into ours because both of our lists are really short. So for me, it's a lot of the Final Fantasy games. It's kind of like almost every Final Fantasy game after 5, I've beaten multiple times. So I've beaten Final Fantasy 5, and that's purely due to the 4-job Fiesta. I've only beaten 6 once, so that doesn't count, which is kind of like, oh yeah, I should get back around to that, right? That feeling. But then I've beaten Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, and 13 and 15 multiple times each.
You've done 13 multiple times? That surprises me.
I have. So I beat it when it originally came out, and then I did it when I was going through every Final Fantasy game in order. So that was 2 different playthroughs.
All right. See, I thought that was your first playthrough of 13 when you did the entire series.
No, everything when I did the series playthrough in like chronological order, it was my first playthrough of 1 through 6. So I had never played any of those, which was really interesting to go back and get all the context for it. But since then, I've tried to go back to most of those games again. And a lot of them, I'm just like, no, I kind of got what I needed out of this. Like, I don't want to play this again because it's showing its age or it's rough around the edges or there aren't modern conveniences. And I know that's like a bunch of ways of saying the same thing, but there's something there that kind of prevents me from it. The only one that I've replayed from that first 6 again is Final Fantasy V, because that 4-job Fiesta, like I've beaten it multiple times.
Yeah, I've beaten 5 multiple times, and part of that isn't the 4-job Fiesta for me, but it was having played it in Japanese when I was a teenager. Well, played the Japanese version that had been fan translated, I guess is a better way to put it. And I beat it then, and then the this different versions that have come out over time, like the Game Boy Advance version or now the mobile version and things like that. I've probably beaten it 3 or 4 times, and that's why I haven't been able to do the 4-job Fiesta that much, is because now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, yep, I've experienced this game. It's like, I know this game and I don't want to play this again.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know, at least it changes it up every year. But even this year, like I didn't finish it. This was the first year I didn't finish the 4-job Fiesta, so I might be getting to that point. I don't know. We'll see what happens next year. But I see on your list, you have 6 listed.
I do. I've played 6 multiple times. I've beat it when I was a kid, and I beat it, well, I don't even know how old I was. I say kid, but it was when I was an adolescent or teenager, and then I've beaten it as an adult going back. So it's just a good game. You should go back and play it.
Well, and one on your list that you have is Chrono Trigger. That's one that's kind of on my list of like, I should go back and play that. It's not a super long game. It's like 20 to 25 hours your first playthrough, and it should just go faster after that.
Yeah, it does. It goes a lot faster after that. Once you know where you're going and what you're doing, it's a lot faster. It's one that has a new game plus. If I remember right, it was the very first game that had a new game plus. And so I want to go back. My most recent playthrough was just a couple of years ago on the DS. So I want to take my DS save and then do a new game plus with it, because that's one thing I've never done. And new game pluses are starting to really get interesting to me more than a straight replay, is to be able to take some of those things that I've done to progress, like in Fire Emblem Three Houses, and be able to move forward in either a different storyline toward a different ending, or really just to power through the game, experience it again without some of the headache from before.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I love a good New Game Plus. They're amazing.
And I've never really done them. Like the Persona 5 New Game Plus, I'm at 44 hours in Persona 5, and I'm just out of Palace 3. And so I'm right at that perfect point where I need to finish this game. Like, I am totally invested in it. But part of me wants to restart when Persona 5 Royal comes out next year, so that I can get all of the new stuff. But I also just want to finish this out and then have a new game plus of the original with all the social connections again, without having to redo like that 40 hours of building up to this point. And I doubt they're going to let you transfer a save from the original into the second one, into the Royal, as new game plus. So I'm really torn on where to go for that one.
Yeah, that's something that would actually get me to buy Persona 5 Royal, is if you could transfer a save game and do a new game plus after you've beaten the original, but do the new game plus in the new one. That would be amazing.
Yeah. I would be there day one for the Royal if they let me do that.
Yeah,
because
be
Persona
cool.
5 is so amazing. And I want to redo it. And I'm also looking at Cat Quest. Like, Cat Quest has a new game plus, as well as a Mew game plus, and that lets you do things. And so you can level up a lot more. And I'll probably go back and do that one eventually once I get through Cat Quest 2, just because the games are fun to play, even if they're not terribly deep story-wise. They're just really, really pretty and fun.
Well, and I see, like, on your, want to go back and replay, you have Fire Emblem Three Houses too,
Yeah,
which is yeah, like I'm in the middle of a replay of Persona 5 and Fire Emblem Three Houses. So I think you and I are kind of on the same page for like what we want to do, even if we haven't done it yet.
Yeah, where I'm in the middle of Fire Emblem Three Houses, that I got distracted by a bunch of other stuff while I was playing it. Like, I think I had my one of my retreats or a conference come up while I was starting the Fire Emblem Three Houses second game, and so I just got distracted from it. But it's really good. The way they've done New Game Plus is exactly the way that I want it to be, where it doesn't make everything super easy, like you're not overpowering the enemies. You just get a lot of perks that make the game a lot more pleasant to go through the early stages. So I really look forward to finishing it. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with those two. But like for the ones that we've actually beaten, you and I have a couple similarities, which is kind of interesting. So we both have some Mario and we both have some Zelda in the mix here. So for Zelda, we both have Link to the Past, which is interesting. That like out of the limited number of games that both of us have, there's a couple in common. So like Final Fantasy stuff here, and then Link to the Past for Zelda.
Oh, yeah, because it's so good. Like, Link to the Past is maybe one of the best games ever made, and I've played it through so many times that I honestly can't count since it came out. That it was one of those that I would just play over and over as a young adult, kid, adolescent. I can't remember how old I was, but it was just, you beat it, you play Zelda again. That's just how it was, and that was kind of the Zelda game at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of those games that, like, if you're making a games of all time list, there's no way Link to the Past doesn't make top 10. Like, I don't see how it wouldn't.
Yeah, it's just too good. And I don't want to say it's too good. Like, that's not even the way to put it. It was just that perfect place at the perfect time, that when it came out, it did everything right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and okay, so Mario's another one here. Well, you also have Link's Awakening. Is that just because you played it over and over as a kid? Is that the same idea?
Yes. Link's Awakening is the number one game that I've replayed my entire life. I've played it so many times and deleted so many saves and then just restarted it on the original Game Boy that I have, of any game that I probably ever will replay, I lost count on Link's Awakening because I remember just sitting in my family's recliner or in my bedroom playing it, and it was just over and over again. I loved that game so much, and that's why I can't get into the remake of it. You and I discussed a week or two ago about the new one, how we just couldn't really grasp it and like really fall into it. And for me, is it so familiar that I'm just like, I've played this so many times. I can't play this again.
Well, it's interesting because like for Mario, we both have Mario on here. You have Mario 64. And for me, I have beaten every single Mario platforming game ever. And
yes,
just because like I love Mario platformers, and I know that I must have beaten some of these multiple times, but I'm thinking back and I honestly can't tell you which ones I've done multiple times, which ones I've only like just played pieces of them again. But there's no way that I haven't beat a bunch of the Mario platformers like multiple times. I don't even think it's just the ones that I was a kid and I had more time, because like Mario 3D World, like I know I've beaten that multiple times, so it's kind of like a scattering of them. But why did you call out Mario 64 specifically? That's kind of what I want to know.
I'm the same way as you on Mario games. It's like I have no idea which ones I've played and beat multiple times. Super Mario World, I know. I don't know which ones I've gone through because there were different paths that you could take in it. I know I've beaten Mario 3 so many times it's uncountable, and just the first one, everything, but depending on warp zones, how you do it, it's like those are just games that you beat over and over again. Mario 64 though, I got 120 stars on it and then restarted to get them all again. I just loved playing this game so much. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And when it came out, it was pretty much perfect. And I still think it's pretty much perfect, that I love it. And I can restart and play this game and immediately fall in, and I will just continue playing it all the way through until I beat Bowser. I just love the game, and I did it when I was 14 and it came out. I'll probably do it again when I'm 40. It's just a good game.
Yeah, I mean, Mario games all around they're really solid. They're really, really good games.
Yep.
And now we kind of get to the part of our list that are divergent a little bit. So tell me about Kingdom Hearts, and tell me, you have Star Wars on here, and I'm really curious, like, which game? There's a lot of Star Wars games out there.
So Kingdom Hearts is the first one. Like, I've played it multiple times. I want to say I've played most of 2 at least 2 times. Like, I know I beat it once, and I'm trying to think if I beat it the second time, and I can't remember. But I know I've played through at least those twice. I've played through at least most of 2, whether I beat it the second time or not. And the Star Wars, I just put on here Star Wars because I know I beat Shadows of the Empire multiple times. That I played it so much, like I really was afraid of wearing out my cart when I was younger, and the way it saved and everything. Like, I was worried it would lose my saves. Like, I loved Shadows of the Empire on the Nintendo 64. I know I've beaten it multiple times. Like, I love that game. And then I can't remember whether or not I've played like Jedi Knight and Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy. The Star Wars Dark Forces games, I can't remember which ones I replayed and beat. That I know that I played them multiple times. Like I was talking about again a couple of weeks ago or last week. I can't remember, where we were talking about Jedi Outcast and getting through the early boring parts with cheats, where I know I've done that on the PC, that it came out again at that perfect time where I was just playing through these games over and over again because I loved them so much.
No, that's sweet. I mean, it's totally understandable that like there's so many Star Wars games, and you and I like Star Wars so much that there's probably a handful out there that you've done multiple times.
Oh, yeah. And it's weird that I haven't done Knights of the Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic 2 multiple times. With as many paths as you can take through them, it's basically I did Knights of the Old Republic 1 as a dark side character and Knights of the Old Republic 2 as a light side character. I never went back and did either or on the other.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, too. I'm the same way. Like, I didn't do Knights of the Old Republic multiple times either. I've thought about it. I've started a second playthrough, but I've never done it again multiple times.
Yeah. Exactly. Same here. I get a little bit into it and I'm like, I'm okay right now.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, the other 2 on my list are Firewatch and Sayonara Wild Hearts, which Firewatch was interesting because like I played it and I really, really liked it. And then we talked about it, and then I think I convinced you to play it, and I talked about it a couple more times on air, like as we were getting towards the end of the year or something. And I just like couldn't stop thinking about it until I went back and I experienced the whole game again, beginning to end. So I finished that one twice within the first 6 months that it was out. And that was really weird for me that I like couldn't move on from it mentally until I like re-experienced the whole thing. But that's a really good game. Like Firewatch is amazing. And then Sayonara Wild Hearts, it was really because of the album mode. I wanted to go back and see how much that changed things. And I know I talked about that a few weeks ago, so I won't dwell on it too much here. But Sayonara Wild Hearts, each time I play it, it has like moved up in my rankings for the year. So the first time I played it, I was like, oh yeah, that was a cool game. Definitely an honorable mention when we do our end of the year list. And then I played it again and I was like, oh man, this is probably like in my top 10 games of the year. And I'm wondering if I play it one more time, because I thought about it the other night and I realized as soon as I started thinking about it that I'm going to play this game at least one more time before we get to the end of the year. I wonder if this is going to crack the top 5. Like it might. I like that game a lot.
It's a really good game, and if there is one game lately that's been made for replayability, it's this one. That it is just awesome. That I haven't finished a replay through album mode because I want to sit down and do it all at one sitting, and I haven't had that much time in one sitting to do it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But I mean, I think in general here, we're finding that our lists are really short. Like if we're, kind of thinking about replaying a game, for me, it's like I'm kind of dabbling to get a feel for it again, or I'm picking up where I left off because I never actually beat it the first time, or it's a game where there's no completion state, right? Like Magic the Gathering Arena. Like you could say I'm replaying every time I play, but I'm not. It's just a game that like never ends, right? So there's not a whole lot of games that have an ending that we've done over and over again. And I just find that interesting.
Yeah, it's weird that I'll start games and like replaying a game when I think about it this way, like when we came up with the topic, it was actually playing a game all the way through again.
Yes, exactly.
But the number of games that I restart, get that feeling of, oh yeah, this was fun, I like this, and then just bounce off because I had that small experience that I wanted to feel again. Like, oh yeah, I'm playing Ocarina of Time again, and that's what it was like to run with Epona across the field. It's like, I may want to do something like that, or get to a certain point and experience a level or a boss or something where it's like a Mega Man game. It's like, I want to play the Skullman level. Things like that I will do, but I very rarely play all the way through a game. But I will restart a lot of games and just play an hour or 30 minutes or something just to be like, yep, I've done that now. I'm fulfilled. I don't have to play this entire thing. Even though I love it, I have that kind of fulfillment that I would get regardless of if I put in 40 or 4 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for me, some of it is I want to go back and I go into it with the intention of like replaying it and rebeating it. But once I get a little ways in, like I just don't have the same momentum as the first time through the game, because you know me, once I latch onto a game and I like get my hooks into it, I'm going to push through that game and just like destroy it. Like I will consume that game extremely fast. But that's not true the second time. Like I just don't feel the same drive to like get through it really quickly and consume all of it. So sometimes it just kind of peters out and then I move on to the next thing. So the ones that have made it through that we talked about, they're definitely worth calling out because they're kind of few and far between. That's probably it for the main topic. Why don't you tell the nice people about our geeky offer of the week?
So we've got a Patreon, and just very briefly, you guys, we would love to have your support. You can go to patreon.com/geek2geekcast and just check out all the stuff that we've got. We are looking at doing patron exclusive episodes. We're working on figuring that out. We have a custom Discord role to show your support for the show. And really, this is what helps keep us on air and keep us doing it. It's just a boost that you have no idea how much it helps. So patreon.com/geek2geekcast.
Yeah, it helps us a ton. Around the network this week, Geekitude, Joe had Katie on from the Tea Time podcast, and they talked all about Halloween, which was super fun to listen to. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea has an episode that I don't know if it hit the feed as of recording this, but they have something out this week. And then Troidal is streaming Thursday mornings, Capsule J is streaming Tuesdays from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes on Thursdays and weekends. And then, of course, you can go check out the Geekery, where Austin writes about Dragon Quest and then maybe new things now that he's beaten all the Dragon Quest games again. And 13 Stories always writing about something interesting, video game related, usually video game related. You can subscribe to all that at geektogeekmedia.com/subscribe if you want it just delivered to you nicely. With that being said, it's time for our weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. What have you been up to?
Well, as of today, I am playing World of Warcraft again. And by playing, I mean I have a subscription again. I don't know how much I'm actually going to be playing, but over the weekend with BlizzCon, they announced the next expansion was going to be WoW Shadowlands. And then I kind of go to look at some of the stuff this morning, like keep it up in a second browser while I'm prepping for work. And I see that today started the WoW 15th anniversary event. And I loved the 10th anniversary event. And I actually missed out on the Corehound mount, so I saw that they were doing a bunch of different raids and things like that from the past, and you can go through and earn a what looks like a Deathwing mount, and I wanted to do that, make sure I do it, so I'm going to basically go through and do that. It's going between now and like January 7th, so they're doing it for a good long time, and that's the kind of thing that draws me back into it, so we'll see what happens. Shadowlands looks kind of neat, doing different things. It'll come out next year. I'm sure I'll go through it, but I went back to WoW for a little while. We'll see what happens. And this weekend, Jennifer and I were on our 10th anniversary trip, and we spent like 4 days at the beach. And a lot of that, like the weather was cold, and so it was perfect. It was like 50 to 60 degrees on the beach, and it would get down into the 30s and 40s at night. Like, it was really delightful to be at the beach where it was like that. And then during the day, it was really pleasant. And when it was too cold to go out or we just wanted to chill, we played Luigi's Mansion on co-op. That it is the first Luigi's Mansion game that I've really given a true shot. Like, I played the first one and didn't like it because I think I was expecting a different game when it was brand new. Never played the second one, and the third one has hooked us, and it is so much fun to play together that I love. I'm Luigi when we play, and she's Luigi, and you have to wait a little bit to open up the co-op part of it, but when you do, it is absolutely great. That I love. The game is just beautiful too. Like, it's funny, it makes us laugh. It's just so simple and silly and fun.
Yeah, it's a solid game. Like, I've been playing it too. So I'm about 45 minutes in. I haven't played a whole lot because my kids took it and they've been playing it instead of me. So
right,
I've been
I figured
watching,
that would happen.
Yeah, and me too, because Luigi's Mansion is one of my daughter's like absolute favorite games ever. So I knew that this was going to happen. I'm 45 minutes in. They're probably like 4 or 5 hours into it. And they've been playing co-op and they've been having a great time. And, you know, they're switching off Luigi and Luigi. And I can say nothing bad about that game. Like, it is what you would expect from a Luigi's Mansion game, but kind of updated. It looks really good because it's on Switch and it's multiplayer, and they've made some improvements. Like, if you have played a Luigi's Mansion game and you don't like them, don't pick this up. If you've played any Luigi's Mansion game and you do like it, like, you go get this because it's that, but really good.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it is just a better iteration of it. That it's just a good Luigi's Mansion game. And for me, that means it's a really fun game for us to do. The best thing about it, though, and I have to call it out, is the way that you communicate with the doctor. That you use the virtual boo, which is just a virtual boy. And it even makes the joke that, like, when people see this thing, it's just going to fly off the shelves. And it's like, it didn't. And
yeah,
I mean,
that was funny.
It's the best part about the game so far is just seeing them put a virtual boy on their face all the time.
Yep. No, I like it. So for me, kind of going along with like your BlizzCon thing, how are Overwatch cinematics so good? Because they released a cinematic for Overwatch 2, and it was just, they always work so well. They're so good at storytelling in this short format. And I don't know if Blizzard could do it in like a full movie version. I mean, the last time they did, they handed it over to Hollywood and like a director, and things that they don't do when they're doing these internal videos. I wonder what an hour-long or 2-hour-long like Blizzard animated movie would look like if they did it with the same studios they use in-house. But this is one of their like 7-8 minute like character portrait type of thing. And it was really focusing on like getting Overwatch back together. So it wasn't just one character, it was a handful of characters. But man, it got me right in the feels. It was fantastic. It got me hyped for Overwatch 2 before I even knew like what it was or what it was going to be about. And I just had to call out, like, their cinematics for Overwatch are just next level.
They're so good. Like, I didn't get to see this. You sent me a message about how great it was, and I was at dinner, and we still had like an hour to drive to get back to our condo at the beach. So I didn't get to watch it for a good 2 hours at least after you sent it to me, after you told me that it was out and that you loved it and we were talking about it. And then we're lying in bed, and I decide, oh yeah, I need to watch the Overwatch cinematic. So Jennifer actually watches it with me, and this is the first time that, like, I've been playing Overwatch for how many years now? Like 4 years since it's been out, and Jennifer has apparently had no idea what Overwatch is really. And like, she thought it was an MMO because it's online, and I'm like, no, it's just a shooter. It's a team shooter. And she's like, oh, I thought it was an MMO. So we were just talking about it, like how it's kind of superheroes with these people. Like, it's almost a superhero kind of a feel to a lot of it, and it's really cartoony, which she didn't realize any of it. And she loved the cinematic of this. It makes her kind of want to try it. So since I got the Switch version, I'm going to reinstall it on the Switch, because I'd actually deleted it, and see what she thinks about it. That with her watching that, especially with like the Winston part in the cinematic with the, you know, the giant ape running around with a lightning cannon, like we said 4 years ago with in the first season of this, monkey with a lightning cannon, and you can't really go wrong with it. It's still the truth, because Jennifer saw it and was like, this is way different than what I expected. Then we watched the gameplay trailer for it, and she was like, okay, I see what that is. Like, I don't know if she'll like it, but this cinematic is the first time that she's ever cared to even think about it.
It's so good. I mean, even if you guys have never played Overwatch or looked into Overwatch, if you go look up the cinematic for Overwatch 2, just give it a shot. It's like 7 minutes out of your day, whether you want to play the game or not. Like, it's a really solid cinematic, so it's worth watching.
It is. It's really good.
It's really good.
I have not watched the World of Warcraft cinematic, though, the Shadowlands one. I haven't watched it yet, but I watched the Overwatch 2 one for sure.
Yeah, I don't care as much about the other announcements they did. Diablo looks grimdark again, and WoW is still WoW. So it's kind of whatever.
Exactly.
But the Overwatch cinematic, I was like, oh yeah, I have to watch that.
Yeah,
besides
for sure.
that, this week, I listened to the entire backlog of a podcast that's not super old yet, so it didn't take me very long. But it's called Strong Songs. And it's really, really good. It's Kirk Hamilton, who used to be on one of the Kotaku podcasts. He's still there, but he doesn't work for Kotaku anymore. And it's his kind of like new project and new focus, because he's a musician, and he has been for a really long time. That's kind of what he's trained in.
Right.
And he goes in and he breaks apart pieces of songs and tells you what's interesting about them, or like how they built this melody, or how they built like this song and all the constituent pieces, and what's interesting, what's different about it, what you like about it without even knowing that you like it about it. And it gets really into the weeds. So what I suggest doing is either look at the backlog of it, because he's only been doing it for like, I don't know, 6 months or something like that, if even, because he recently moved over from the other stuff that he was doing in the video game world, which is how I know of him in the first place.
Right.
But either look through, and if there's a song that you really like that he has covered like this, pick that song and start there. But if you look through and none of the songs are ones that jump out at you, just go into one of his Q&A episodes. They are so insightful, and they give you an idea of how smart he is when it comes to music and what goes into all of the parts of a song. And that was kind of where I started. I started with the Q&A episodes, and then I started going song by song. And I just love this podcast. It's a really, really good podcast.
That's interesting. I don't think I would be able to listen to that one, because I'm not a music guy really at all, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was good. So if I don't know how much of a music guy I am, but it's something that I'm listening to now every time it comes out, and I really enjoy it. So to go along with that, I've also kind of been on this mission in the background of trying to find wireless headphones that work for me. And I've tried so many different wireless headphones. I've stayed away from the super expensive ones, because I keep finding ones that I think will work and then they don't work, or they seem to work for a little bit and then I get annoyed with something or another. And I think I finally found my headphones. This has been, I've been working on this for like a year, and I haven't talked about it because I've been super frustrated. But the true wireless headphones, the ones that like stick in your ear and they only maybe have a wire that connects like around the back, or they're like standalone earbuds, so they have no wire whatsoever, those always end up hurting my ears after like 30 to 60 minutes, because they have to have the battery pack included in the earbud, and they just like drag on your ear. Or if they don't, then the battery life is really, really bad. I started moving into more of like, okay, well, what about the ones that kind of have one wire that goes between them? And I found some that worked for longer, but they would still get annoying after a couple hours. And I found these ones that were highly reviewed. Somebody that I trusted said, hey, check out these ones. And it's the Skull Candy inked wireless headphones. And they're not actually the true wireless ones. They're the ones that you kind of have like battery pack control thing that sits around half your neck. Like it's, you've seen those. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, that look kind of like a necklace that is almost like a collar you wear.
Yeah, and it doesn't connect around the front, but like they have, the two earbuds that kind of dangle off just maybe like 4 inches off the front of them. Yep. So it's almost like a half necklace that sits around the back of your neck. I love these headphones. They're like exactly what I've been looking for, and I didn't realize it. So I had to go away from the true wireless kind of into this more wireless adjacent. It's more of a disconnected headphone. You don't have to have it plugged into your phone, and that's the main thing. But the battery life on these things is incredible. And I love Skull Candy, and I haven't like been using my Skull Candies as much as I've been trying to find like headphones that work. And now I'm back with the brand, and I was like, oh yeah, I always loved the Skull Candy brand and their headphones and what they do. So I think this is it. I think these are the headphones I'm going to go with. So again, if you guys are interested, they're the Skull Candy inked wireless headphones.
And right now, I've been doing the same thing of just trying to find some that worked for me, except I need them for running. And so the two that I've actually landed on lately, I can't wear these with the thing around your collar, is because it drives me crazy running because it bounces and moves around so much and rubs. But I found some with the wire between them that are the Beats Power Beats 3 that I found refurbished for cheaper, and they work really well. And also there's one called MPOW, MPOW Flame, that also works like that. They sound really good, and they're about $20, and they're really high quality running headphones. It's crazy how much I've enjoyed those. So same for me. Like I've been trying to find wireless headphones that were worthwhile and worth paying for and using. So I'm glad that we both kind of found that. I'll have to look into Skull Candy in the future because I've never used any of theirs.
Oh yeah, I love Skull Candy stuff. So I'm glad that I ended up kind of getting back around to the brand. They just didn't have good wireless offerings for a while, and I didn't realize that they had caught up. And now that they have, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is the headphone for me. So
awesome. I
figured that out in the last week. And then the other main geekery thing that I've done is I started a Star Wars rewatch. And this is really because of the Podcasters Assemble podcast with Troidal Power from the network. They are going through, and a bunch of podcasters contribute if you've never listened to the episodes. But go check it out. It's a podcast. You can get it right now, Podcasters Assemble. And they take all of these different podcasters' like feedback or thoughts about a movie, and then they stitch them all together. So it's like you get, 10 or 15 people's impressions of a movie all cut up and like edited together, which is really cool. And so I started listening to that, and I realized I've watched so many Star Wars movies, and like the only way that I haven't watched them before is chronologically. I never watched them in the order of like what happens in the story, in the universe, like in that order. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I went, and I'm doing that. Phantom Menace, there's not a lot to say about the prequels, and I'm not going to bash on them because we've talked, all of those through. There are things we like, there's a lot of things we don't like. But Phantom Menace, one of the things that I noticed new this time is Qui-Gon a gray Jedi, or is he like a proto-gray Jedi? Because he does some interesting things in there that aren't super Jedi-like that I really kind of approve of. And it's interesting. Like, I almost wish that he had been around longer as a character because I think they could have done fascinating things with him.
Yeah, I don't understand why they had to kill him off, but he's probably the most interesting character from the prequels. And I want to read more of the EU stuff, especially the new canon, if they get into him at all, because it's been interesting for me to think about the same thing. Like, is he a gray Jedi? And I saw a lot coming out when the Old Republic, the MMO, was being released, if they were going to basically take Qui-Gon as an example of like gray storylines as the way the personality went.
And like, I would buy it. So I'm reading the one thing in the new EU that has Qui-Gon in it. So I'll report back once I finish that.
What is it?
I think it's called Master and Apprentice. It's like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. But it just came out like a month ago. So it's really new.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen the name, and I didn't realize they were the Master and Apprentice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's by Claudia Gray. She does some of my favorite stuff in Star Wars, in like the new canon, so I'm excited for that one. I'm just not very far into it. So I watched the prequels. They were the prequels. But I think I actually like Solo more than I like the prequels, which was surprising to me for how my initial reaction to that movie was. I still think Solo is just kind of okay. I don't think it needs to exist, but also now that I know what to expect going into it, it was totally fine. It was fine as like an action movie, which is I think what I felt walking out of it. I was just, I was having negative reactions because it wasn't everything I wanted it to be. But it's okay. So I think that, in ranking order, that's probably above the prequels for me. But one of the things that I noticed was that the prequels give a lot more meaning to the original trilogy, especially with A New Hope. Like that movie specifically, you get a lot more context from the prequels, which makes sense because they were built to lead up to it. But
Right.
I've never watched them straight through in this order without doing like machete order or something else. So to see it flow from the story perspective was interesting for me. And then the one other thing that I noticed that was the most surprising to me is how much I like Rogue One. And I know that you're not a fan of it, but I like Rogue One more now than I ever have before. And I appreciate it so much more in context. Like, it has the right tone for the movie that it's trying to be. And that's where you don't like it. You don't like the movie that it's trying to be and the tone that it strikes.
I don't like, because that's not the kind of movie I like, but I can appreciate what it's doing. The reason I don't like it is actually you and I feel exactly opposite about Rogue One and Solo, because I think that Rogue One has absolutely no reason to exist, and it is not doing anything for the Star Wars universe that we didn't already know.
I disagree, but we've talked that through to death, so I'm not going to get into all of that, right? Some of the reasons that like I still like this one, I think it makes Star Wars feel like an actual war in a way that none of the other movies do. The stakes feel real in a way that like a lot of the other Star Wars movies, they don't, because you're
go ahead.
I
want to ask about that.
Okay.
I want to ask about why they feel real to you, because that's one of the big sticking points that I have with this, is because that the stakes don't matter at all, because these characters are not anywhere else. You know that they can't survive. Their emotions, their emotional connections are rushed, and they don't like have any real relationships built up. Like, I don't feel any stakes in this movie.
So it's not from the high level. It's not because of the mission they're trying to achieve, because they're going to get there, right? Like, there's no tension on that side. It's more about the fact that any of them could die at any moment, because they're not going to carry forward. So
but
there's
why is
this
that? That's where I'm like, that's not stakes, because they're going to die.
But it does something where suddenly, because it feels like a war and because any of these characters could die at any moment, there's a real sense of like, there's real stakes to every confrontation. Like, stormtroopers feel scary in this movie in a way that they don't in literally any other Star Wars movie ever. Like, if you see stormtroopers, like, they just, they're going to miss everybody unless it's like some character that you've never heard of before that they hit off the side and they show up on screen for like half a second, or they're just going to get destroyed. Like, that's what happens every time a stormtrooper is on screen. But in this one, they actually feel like, oh, these guys are kind of deadly. These could like really mess us up. Like, I don't know. There's something about the way it's shot and the way that it's put together, and it's a war movie, and it kind of gets into like the rest of what I want to say, right? So like the rebels kind of feel more like a rebel than just another army, because in a lot of the other ones, it feels like, oh, here's our forces, here's their forces, here's our set of like ships, here's our fleet, there's their fleet. It's almost just like army to army, right? It never really feels like this little rebellious insurrection against a giant empire the way that it does in this movie. And a lot of this is done through the cinematography. And this is the thing that really stuck out to me more than anything else, because I watched it right after the prequels, I watched it right after Solo, and I watched it right before diving into the original trilogy. The cinematography of Rogue One is amazing. Like, it is a step above all of those other movies that I've watched. And I don't think it's quite as good necessarily as the sequel trilogy, but I'm not there yet, right? So I was watching it in the context of everything else around it, and the cinematography is just so much better from like a technical and creative standpoint than everything else that surrounds it. So that
I agree with that. The cinematography on that movie, like, it accomplishes being a war movie that feels like a war movie. And you're absolutely right about the stormtroopers. Like, I will absolutely concede that is a glowing part of the movie.
Yeah, and so the other thing walking away from that is that I'm kind of surprised how excited I am for that Cassian Andor show, because now I think I appreciate Rogue One even more than I did before.
Okay, so I'm curious about that, because I'm not interested at all in that one, obviously. Why are you interested in it? For the character or for the world that it's set in to be able to see what they do with it?
For the world. The character's kind of whatever. Like, he'll be fine.
Okay.
But it's more about the world. Now that I've seen, like, if they keep it in the tone of what Rogue One was doing, I want to see more of that world.
Okay, that's fair. That's the only reason really I want to see it is I want to see more of that time period, because Cassian always seemed just kind of there to me. And so giving him a show was just like, wow, you're giving a cardboard box a nice new TV show. That's great. But it was like, he's a beige wall to me. And so it's that's what I was curious about, because whether he was there and you saying like he's like, it's like that makes me happy. Because it's like, I'm, as much as you and I differ on the movies and the way that we feel about this one in particular, I was really curious on what it was about that show that was interesting you.
Yeah, it's the world. I hope they keep it in the vein of like Rogue One and they build on that. So that's where I'm at with the rewatch. I'm about to go into rewatching all of the ones that I would rank the highest in my Star Wars rankings. So we'll see what happens next, because I basically have watched through A New Hope. So I'm about to go into Empire and everything beyond, and all of those movies are really good. I mean, out of the other, 4 that I have left, Return of the Jedi is probably the weakest, and even that's pretty solid. So we'll see. I can report back in a week or two here, and I will have watched everything. That's kind of my goal.
Okay, and you have 5. You should have 5. The 3 originals and Last Jedi and Force Awakens.
I watched A New Hope already, so we're down to 4.
Did you? Okay, for some reason, my brain was just like, nope, you haven't seen any of the new trilogy.
Yeah,
or the original trilogy.
I stopped right after A New Hope. That's where I am. So I will report back with the rest, maybe even by next week.
Okay, cool. And I actually have been planning on doing the same thing, probably not in chronological order, but I'm going to be rewatching most of them. I'm probably not going to watch Attack of the Clones again because it was a painful experience last time. I'll watch part of Phantom Menace, and then I want to actually rewatch Solo maybe tonight and rewatch Rogue One. I'm actually going to rewatch Rogue One to give it another real shot, but then move through, obviously, the others before Rise of Skywalker comes out. But I look forward to seeing Solo again, and I look forward to seeing Rogue One again, taking these thoughts into consideration.
Yeah, so
like
when you watch
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, so when you watch it, don't worry too much about the characters and don't worry about the central plot, because you know what's going to happen with all of those. And I think that's where you're disappointed. Like, look at what they do with the world building. Look what they do with the framing and the rebellion and the empire and all of the, like, they're almost like one step up from an idea perspective from like the core of it. And I know the first time that you see it in theaters, you can't help but only focus on the core. That's just kind of the way it works. But I think there's a lot there. And I hope that I hope you like it more on your next round.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it 3 times, and every time, the first time I liked it, the second time I did not, and the third time it was just like, oh my God, this is just as bad as I remembered it being. Where it's
so maybe you won't like it then.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the reason because I watch movies for characters. And I like one of the reasons I like the new trilogy is because I really like the characters in them. I like Finn and I like Ben, I like Kylo Ren, and I like Rey a lot. And so I like seeing these interactions and everything. But in this one, there wasn't a single character in the movie that I liked at all. Some of them were moderately interesting, but none of them I ever cared if they died in any given scene. I was like, I don't know your name, or I don't like watching you. That's fine. Where that's why I watch movies. And so for me, it was like a complete miss.
So I think that this time when I watched it, there were 2 characters. There was the rebellion and there was the empire. And like in my mind, something about switching over to that really changed my perspective on this movie.
That's fair. I could totally see that. And I will say, like, based on the cinematography stuff that you're talking about, we're probably running long because we got into Star Wars. But I went back recently and rewatched the Vader scene at the end. And it absolutely goes to show what you were talking about with the cinematography. That is one of the best scenes in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Absolutely one of the best things that has ever been filmed of Star Wars was just putting Vader in that airlock. And if looking at the rest of the movie through that lens of being like, okay, let's look at how they shot this from a filmmaking perspective, I may like it better. I will give it that at the very least, because it is hardcore bottom of my list on Star Wars movies. I will take the theatrical Clone Wars movie with Rotto the Hutt as a baby before I will take Rogue One. So we'll see.
For me, it's in my top 5. It might be in my top 3 at this point. So we come in very different places with it. But yeah, go watch it, report back. We'll talk more because we're getting to Star Wars time of the year. That's probably it for today, though. You guys can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on Slack and Discord. You can go to geek2geekmedia.com for invite links, and while you're there, check out all the other content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast.
We've been avoiding Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, guys.
Hey geeks, this is Capsule J. I'm a streamer on the Geek to Geek Media Network. If you like discovering new games and chatting with cool nerdy folks, be sure to check out my channel on Twitch. You can find it at twitch.tv/CapsuleJ. That's CapsuleJay. I stream a blend of indies, retro games, and RPGs most Tuesday nights from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, and occasionally on Thursdays and weekends. Hope to see you then.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.
Hello friends, this is Troidal Power inviting you to join me over on Twitch most weeknights, sometime after dinner. Video games have always been a social hobby for me, with friends and family crammed together on a couch chatting away while someone holds the controller. And thanks to the power of the internet, I've got my own virtual couch over on Twitch where you can kick back and goof off while I play games. Find me on Twitch by searching Troidal Power, that's TROYTLE Power, to snag a spot on the couch.
Hello, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea.
And together we are Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, a podcast all about pop culture.
We talk about books, movies, music, basically anything we want at this point. Yes, we obsess about K-pop.
And Keanu Reeves.
And sometimes Katie cries on the podcast.
Hey, that's rude.
But really, we're just here to talk about all the things that we love, so make sure to head over to teatimewithkc.com and geek2geekmedia.com to check us out. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our show wherever you download your podcasts. Bye!